What's everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Grand Torino. Delighted you could join me. Something a little bit different tonight. Just want to play a few short excerpts from the presser over in the United States last night, just outlaying the case for massive voter fraud. I encourage you to go over and check out the full 1 hour and 40 presentation from Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell. Their revelations were quite revealing in their revelation. I want to play just a little takeaway from what I will describe to you will be a mimetic sort of presentation. Do please pay attention. I will keep it as brief. Just one article to touch in. With everything that is going around, most of us can be distracted by our day-to-day. It's understandable. It's absolutely unheard of times. Pretty crazy. Well, not unheard of in this part of the world, going and reflecting on our history. But let me just play this little cutaway, this little throwaway. Now, like I said to you, if you do check out Sidney Powell's presentation of her case for evidence, we talk about Dominion. Dominion is being the big name touted around. Dominion. There are other little offshoots of that we need to be aware of, primarily Cytol. But you'll see that more as I play. But just this last closing statement here from Sidney. I did have a few other cutouts, but it's just a little bit elongated. Like I say, I want to keep this short and sweet for us all tonight. So let's just jump in and just have a listen to this from Sidney, please.
The world is watching this. I have gotten multiple emails from people in other countries who watch the same pattern happen there. We have witness testimony that the same things were done in those countries as this was exported from Venezuela and by Maduro and by Mr. Chavez and by Cuba. And of course we know China also has a substantial presence in Venezuela and substantial interest in making sure that President Trump does not continue in office. This is the consummate foreign interference in our election in the most criminal way you can possibly imagine. It must be shut down.
Indeed, it must be shut down, Sidney. But more to play on that. Nothing is set in stone. It's all to play for. No official certification. We wait to see how our friends over the United States come to a resolution. I think it's tough times and difficult times, but tough times and difficult times for us all. Given what's going on here in the Republic of Ireland with Level 5, I could touch on to you with many different stories. But I think I want to keep our attention on the proposed Fianna Fáil bill that's being presented here, this hate speech legislation. That pretty much, as one of our commentators over on Twitter, Robert Burke, mentioned, it's a foregone conclusion. Fianna Fáil, the party that is the walking dead, doesn't completely understand that it is dead, and most of its base have fled the coup, shall we say, probably heading over towards Sinn Féin. But it's just by their action and their authoritarian control, and Micheál Martin's sheer delight, it would seem, at locking down people with the untold stories going on in the background. Like I said, tonight's presentation will be a little bit mimetic. And before I get into tonight's articles, it's the stuff like this that just pops up on social media that just kind of grabs my attention. Read that there for yourself. Absolutely shocking. And more and more people I begin to understand in my day-to-day, and I'm sure you do too, equally, are becoming aware and are being caused to question their epistemology. I keep lauding that, but this situation in its entirety, in its reality, is showing us the darkness that is encroaching upon us. Anyway, the next article I want to bring to you is from our good friend Conor Fitzgerald. I have read many an article by him before as well, but with the new legislation that's being proposed and being pushed forward, and as we said, it's a foregone conclusion. Our good friend Conor wrote this article back in 2019 of August, sort of predicting what this would inevitably lead to. And I want to expand a little bit on it tonight, but I'm going to let you use your own imagination as I present it to you. Let me just get into this article from Connor's. Ireland doesn't need hate speech legislation. At the height of the whole Google speech universe or farce, I mentioned felt the real issue at stake was the potential to use such events for the suppression of political speech through the introduction of new hate speech laws. I suggest that the purpose of removing the blasphemy clause from the Constitution was clear some legal space to allow for that, closing a chapter on the conventionally pious part of our legal history so that the era of secular piety could begin in earnest. I got pushback on that basis that there was no necessity to remove blasphemy in order to create new laws, and that incitement to hatred law is already on the books. This is all true, but what we're talking about here is sanctity and morality laws. So it's not a pure practical matter. Looking at the reaction to a couple of incidents in the last couple of weeks, I'm confident in my views. Laws controlling speech are coming, or at the very least, a strong push for them is. They are not necessary and they must be resisted. This article from 2019, we had an incident happen over here over in the south part of Dublin here in the Republic of Ireland. Then we had a collection of talking heads come in, and you can read them through there, a couple of excerpts as Conor has collated there. And this was kind of building and steering the conversation and the narrative and the drive for these supposed race hate incidences. And it's going to expand even on that. To mind what's going on over in the kids' classrooms, I'm seeing some of the new stuff that's coming in as the Minister for Children is now sitting down and setting out to unify all the NGOs and tax guzzling entities that will get involved in this new belonging together or whatever it is as well. It seems quite militaristic, has its own flag and has its own ideology of allegiance. But we continue on with Conor. Like I said, you can see some more of the usual talking heads here. Some that have already come to prominence when they were openly speaking about female genital mutilation and how it was a cultural right. The good Dr. Ali Salim, one of the Trinity professors, and he was rightly rounded upon that opening remark that he made. Of the high-profile incidences that happened recently, we have a recording of an attack that occurred in Dundrum and are well placed to judge its larger meaning for ourselves. Disappointingly for activists, there is no obvious racial element to it, but it's nevertheless upsetting to listen to. The empathy it arouses and the big-heartedness of all Irish people is what proponents of laws limiting speech count on. Regular Irish people will be supportive of laws that stop women getting attacked in the street or death threats being delivered by phone. They think people should be respectful of religious symbols. So if that's what's planned, what's the problem? The first problem is that existing incitement laws are good enough. There's no wave of hate we are straining to contain, and if there was, the first step would be an application of those laws. The reason people want something new on the books is psychological, and this is the specifically Irish dimension. Our peripheral history leaves us with a sense of cultural insecurity that asserts itself differently in different segments of the population. The deepest longing of Irish Twitter and company is to be noticed and praised by their equivalents in more cosmopolitan, read multiracial countries, and to be thought they're equal. Or failing that, the best student in the class. Our cultural cognizance will imitate whatever their equivalents in the US or UK do. I know I butchered that word. Whether those things make sense in an Irish context or not, anything to avoid looking like provincials. To the extent that it comes from an indigenous politics and media, the drive for hate speech law is about forcing the symptoms of elite inadequacy on normal people. The second problem is that the laws introduce a moral hierarchy that is not reflective of public morality. Say what you want about our old taboos, for good or ill, they did represent what people held sacred. Passing laws to prevent young girls being assaulted in the street or NEETs throwing up Nazi salutes outside Google would have that kind of support. But what about laws that regarding misgendering as hate speech, or that prevent people from stating that a woman is defined as an adult human female? Would such laws codify the popular sacred values of Irish people? I don't think they would. If two teenage girls get in a fight and each punches the other, but one is white and tears off the other girl's hijab, I absolutely do not accept that a greater category of crime has been created by the latter act. And I think most Irish people would not accept that either. What advocates plan here is not the adoption of laws to reflect the heartfelt beliefs of the community, but the reverse. The plan is to insert new values into people's hearts via the statute book. In fairness, it works, but it's wrong. Minority race and identity issues are not the moral centre of Irish life. The third problem is linked to the one above. which is that once we start down this path, there will be no end to it. In describing the circular and self-fulfilling nature of the anti-racist grift, Coleman Hughes has written about what he calls racism treadmill. While racism exists, activists will demand further powers to address it. Any evidence of inequality between representatives of races is by definition attributable to racism. Since even in an ideal society there will be a minor difference in the lives of individuals, there is no conceivable end to anti-racist activity or the expansion of it. This pattern is characteristic of a particular type of progressive mindset and revealing of its competitive advantage as a belief. There is no outer boundary beyond which progress is desirable. Problems are never solved because addressing them only ever proves the need for a further concentration of power in the hands of activists of various kinds. I guarantee you where we're going. Each prosecution under a new hate speech law will be proof that more arrests, more laws, more funding is needed until we eventually arrive at an authoritarian clownocracy of Germany or the UK. There is a hate crime treadmill and we are about to step on it. Let's not. Finally, even if this type of law was necessary, it is only the last part of a wider conversation that we haven't even started. Don't ask me to curtail my freedom to dissent in order to make the country safe for a cultural change I have not consented to. If any major political party or public figure in Ireland wants to talk about where we're going culturally and why, let's have it. Until then, the discussion doesn't even begin with hate speech laws, any more than the discussion on whether I should buy a house starts with presenting me with a bill for tarmacatting the driveway. This is not about preventing assaults or death threats or right-wing terrorism, because those things are either currently illegal or could be made so irrespective of any racial component. In no particular order, this is about cultural keeping up with the Joneses, making political dissent impossible and empowering zealots, grifters and people who are a little of both. It's about changing the moral landscape of the country, without doing the hard work of convincing anyone that the cultural changes you've decided on are necessary, good or inevitable. Great piece from Conor. That for me, that just completely outlines this juncture in time where we land before the zombie party that is Fianna Fáil in its hunt for the woke vote, even though it is a dying carcass. I mean zombie, most of its base is left and probably gone to Sinn Féin. And have been firmly placed on the hook by Fine Gael. Good old Micheál Tin is carrying the can for everything while Fine Gael are giggling while their friends are all rubbing their hands. Massive profits coming our way. Don't forget, wear a mask. Speaking of masks, I think with this emoji here and the new set of 2020 emojis unveiled, not only is it humorous but kind of belies a little bit of truth behind the thinking. Shh, don't talk. We don't want to see your lips moving. The piece also mentioned in there about the draconian authoritarian control that Germany is now exerting on its citizenry. And I'll play you this little short video as well. Pay attention to the media's complicity in enforcing and screaming for this. Those that are decrying fascism and wanted to come, have a look towards Germany. Have a look to our friends in the United Kingdom who are starting to mirror those laws. And you can be damned as sure as possible that Ireland, as it stated in that article, will want to be the best student in the class. You watch the hate speech laws that we can do. Hold my beer. We're going to flip in this Irish jurisdiction. It wasn't for nothing that Pakistan took our best blasphemy laws and incorporated them into their constitution or whatever they use over there. And that comes with a death penalty. But they used it verbatim. They used our language, our legal language verbatim, and convict and kill on that blasphemy law. We were a little bit more forgiving. But like I said, look toward Germany. If we're screaming out for these, as I say, the reversal of hundreds of years of jurisdictional precedent on the presumption of innocence being flipped to now the presumption of guilt, you are guilty on someone's perceived offence of you just being reasons. Listen to this. This is Dr. Andres. This is how happened to Dr. Andres Noack in Germany. After the unconstitutional approval of the infection law, police broke into his house, while he was having a live transmission on YouTube. Those who cried against fascism have created the most criminal dictatorship in
Entschuldigung,
history.
hier, die Polizei ist gerade da. Die Polizei ist gerade da. Ja.
Und jetzt?
Mach mal bitte auf. Ja, ich weiß nicht, was los ist.
Das ist doch gerade ein
Ich
schön.
weiß nicht.
Guck mal, wir haben vorhin über Angst gesprochen.
Moment, hier ist gerade die Polizei, bricht gerade die Tür auf.
Polizei! Ich will die Hände sehen! Auf den Boden, runter, beide! Runter auf den Boden! Geh runter!
Den Hund wegziehen, sofort den Hund wegziehen!
2 Personen hier! Am Boden liegen bleiben! Wie sind Ihre Namen? Wie heißen Sie? Wie heißen Sie?
Ich bin Andreas Noack.
Sonst irgendwelche Messer, Waffen, irgendwas einstecken.
Nein.
Computer aus.
You can well imagine what happened anyway. The doctor was taken away and the rest of his colleagues, as they were in the middle of a live stream speaking about, and I believe that doctor was arrested previous as well. But that happened because, and I believe the state exercising its power because a number of great patriots and people of great courage travelled to Dusseldorf and prosecuted the case and got the mask to retracted so that the legislation for bringing masks was rescinded in Dusseldorf. And that has to play out there. That could be a precedent set in Europe, and hopefully more will act to follow on that. I don't want to let our friends in the media class away, but given what's going on around this, kind of will tie in, I think, to the manufacturing of public support for I'm trying to be cautious with the algos, for something that has a 99.9% survivability rate, or 99.98 as you go through the decades, but nothing lower than 99.95. What are we doing to ourselves? What are we allowing to happen? What are we allowing to happen at this time when she summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom? Time to remember. Time to remember. And all of you have to do, and like I said, the media in all of this, they are bound over by legislation that the minister may direct the authority in writing to refrain from broadcasting any particular matter or matter of any particular class, and the authority shall comply with direction. Show us your empirical evidence on why you are basing all of this level 5 nonsense and destroying children and families' lives. For level 5, show us the evidence. Why the secrecy? Why not the open debate? Why is Luke O'Neill the be-all and end-all? Where's the debate between him and Professor Cahill? Speaking of which, and I round you out on this, 28th November might be our last opportunity to strike out regardless of who's there. Maybe it's a time for people to come together, and maybe rather than share it on social media, get out and speak to your friends, speak face to face, because that's what they want to curtail, because that's where the true conversation of the Irish nation lies, is when we are joined together and not separated, where they control the narrative on online social media, and we keep playing in their football fleet with their rules. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, like I say, just a short one from me. A lot to think about, a lot to stew on. TikTok time is ticking away. We wait and see what happens in the United States. That shouldn't really affect us. Anything going over there, we should be concentrating here on what we need to do. I remind you, the 28th of November, something to ponder. Maybe see you there. Look after yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll see you after the weekend, possibly Monday night. And remember, keep the chin up, have a big cheeky smile on your face, and I'll see you Monday evening, okay? Puss.